Good morning. Welcome to office hours. Let me know if you can hear me okay. There's no funny echo going on. Hello, hello. Hang on a sec. There's a funny echo happening for me. Does it sound okay for you guys? Please hold. Don't want to be distracted by my own voice. 1 second here. One moment. Apologies. Testing. Still a bit of an echo. Hang on a second. Is that any better? I might need to refresh. Hang on a second, guys. Testing, testing. Still an echo. Apologies here. Just need to tweak my mic set. I'm going to switch computers. Hang on a second. Is that any better? Yes, I don't think there's any weird echo. Let me know if you can hear me okay. Yay, okay. Apologies for that delay. Okay, so hopefully, if you've never been to an office hours before, usually we bring on a guest to kind of show different ways that people are using Notion, but I've been getting a lot of emails with very random questions, and I know that there's a lot of those questions that actually would help other people, so we thought let's bundle them together into one session and try and cover as many of them as we can. Some good ones have come in already. So let me just do a quick screen share as well, because I'm sure I'll need to open up my space, do some clarification. Thank you everyone for your patience. Maybe let us know in the chat how long you've been using Notion, maybe what level you're at, some of the things you're specifically trying to do, because I know there's so many different use cases and ways that people are using Notion, whether it's with their teams, whether it's to manage your household, creating standard operating procedures, whether you're familiar with the para method. It's great to hear kind of where people are at and their familiarity level. Hey, April, Torin, Craig, Hannah, awesome. Edgar, few months. Okay, cool. 2 to 3 weeks. Yep. Managing work and life. Intermediate. Yep. Lots of people implementing the para method. 6 months. Okay. University, yeah, lots of people using it to track their studies. I seriously wish something like Notion had existed when I was doing my university years. Do you feel excited or overwhelmed? 2 months, yeah, Sandra, about a year. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to dive into to try answering some of these questions. I'm going to do my best. Now, I don't work for Notion, so I don't necessarily have insight into specific feature development or when things are going to happen, but I have been using the product pretty regularly for almost 2 years. I love it. Pretty much all parts of my life are managed inside of Notion, and so a lot of my answers to these questions are going to be based on my own personal experience. So let's jump in. One of the highest voted questions right now is in the para method, what happens when a project like redesign website is completed? Where is it intended that all the decisions, trials and error, meeting notes, etc. is documented? What constitutes being a resource? Well, there's actually like a number of questions in here. What constitutes being a resource? Is project information, the real work, notes, tests, etc. supposed to live within the project itself or the task itself, or be created externally as a resource? So this is a great question, Alex. So it sounds like I'm assuming you're pretty familiar with Para, and maybe potentially you've taken Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain course. Let me know in the chat if you have taken his course or not. Otherwise, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents on that. So a task is the tiniest piece of a project, right? So a project is a container that should contain all of the notes, assets, thinking, sketches, you name it, all contained within one project. So archiving is something that we do maybe twice a year. It's not something we do super often, but when a project does need to get archived, I make sure that all of the tasks related to that project have actually been moved out of my master task database and into that project itself. So the project becomes a page that contains everything that was related to that project. So I make sure everything is kind of moved in there, and then I move the entire project into the archives area. I'm not sure if there's, a great question that you also followed up with there was kind of what should be created externally as a resource versus within the project itself. So for me personally, all of my projects are connected to my Knowledge Hub. My Knowledge Hub is I guess you could call them global resources. Those are resources that would support any project, any task. I can relate them to anything I'm working on. And so I would say only project-specific resources should actually live inside of your project space. Otherwise, I create a relation between those two, and I just connect and relate to that global information. So I hope that makes sense. Meeting notes, everything else like that. So when I create a new project, I actually have project templates that create new databases inside of each of those projects. So every client project would have its own set of meeting notes, its own set of resources, its own set of trials and error, ideas, you name it, everything. And so every project becomes its own little unique bucket of all of those unique resources, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. Feel free to ask any clarifying questions. Okay, perfect. And I saw your comment, Alex. Haven't taken the course yet. Just trying to figure out how to lay it out for a team so we don't lose info and keep projects on the same page team-wide. Definitely. So I think that's a great distinction too. I think there are some nuances with the para method within a team, which we can go into a little bit deeper, but consider global resources and project-specific resources. Excellent. Okay, so someone said, this is Craig, I noticed your screen share with your getting things done list with Michelle, office hours on Thursday. You had a list of triggers, but I noticed you had 2 columns side by side with a professional and personal triggers. How did you get the lists side by side when you opened the toggle? When I try to put items in the toggle, I cannot get them side by side. So yes, Craig, this is actually a funny thing about Notion, and I'm going to zoom in and show you this. And I think you were mentioning, you were basically referencing the mind sweep, right? My mind sweep, I'm going to open that up here. So you can see I've got all of these toggles here that have multiple columns, right? But if you try to create columns inside of a toggle, you will notice that you can't do it. And so let's do that here, because I'm going to show you a workaround for this. And I'm going to give this a color background just so you can see what I'm doing. So here is a toggle. And so let's say I want some pretty columns in there. You drag columns by doing this, right? But you'll notice you can't actually do that while you're inside the toggle, which is unfortunate and frustrating, but I've got them up here, right? So it's a bit of a funny workaround, but you basically have to create a new page. So I'm going to call this 2 columns. I'm going to turn this into a page by hitting Command Option 9, or you can also always go to Turn Into Page. I use a lot of shortcuts because I'm moving through Notion very quickly. So Command Option 9, click on this. And depending, you can make it full width or not. But basically, you make your columns in here. So let's call this one column 1, column 2. Right, so now we've got our 2 columns. I'm going to go back to the mind sweep here and turn this into text. And then you can just delete the top piece and you've got your 2 columns. It's a funny little workaround, but you can actually, again, switch things from text to toggles. Oh, I think I need it to be zoomed in on the screen here. Oh, I'm sorry, guys, I missed that. Do you want me to go through that again, how to do columns inside of a toggle? Don't know. Okay, I'll do it again. Okay, so we got another, let's make another toggle. I'm just giving this a background, so just so you can kind of see what's actually happening in there. Create a new page. Let's make 3 columns on this one. And turn that into a page, or again, you can just go click on the left-hand side and say turn into page. So you actually have to do your formatting in the page itself. So I'm going to my 3 columns. Column 1, column 2, column 3. Great. And so when I go back to my mind sweep here, I'm turning this page into text. And then just deleting that title. Whoop. There you go. So yeah, you can get your columns in there like that. Yes, it's so funny. It's like such a mind-blowing feature. So if you know that you want columns in your toggle, I would say start with a page first, and then you can always like drag your page inside the toggle as well. So you'll see here, I've got a number of different like goals and things like that, all inside these toggles. I have similarly, maybe I'll show you another way that I've been using these toggles. Client tasks. So all of my client tasks are in here. So this is like a dashboard that has all of it. And this is actually being pulled from another page. And all of it can live inside here as a global block, which we maybe have time to cover a bit later. But yeah, you can do quite a bit of nesting inside of those toggles. Toran said, worth the price of tonight's session, right? Right. There's all sorts of funny little hacks like that. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Where did I actually do? I know I've got a couple of sandboxes filled out to do that. So, so yeah, so many possibilities. And something that you guys might have noticed, I've been experimenting a lot with these contextual dashboards. And so I definitely use that a lot. It's a little bit annoying, but again, it opens up so many possibilities. The other thing you can do as well is you can actually create template buttons. So that way, when you want to quickly add 3 columns, add 2 columns, and they can be empty. So Harry says, what I usually do, I make a sub page, then add the columns, then turn the sub page into a toggle. There you go. That's another way of doing it too, as well. That's awesome. Holy moly, a bunch of questions popped in now. Okay. So hopefully we covered that, Craig, and that opens up possibilities for you now. Okay, Kobe asked a great question. So for people that aren't project managers, designers, mainly needing Notion for notes, personal career development, what would the benefits be of setting up a Notion database as opposed to using a sophisticated search engine such as that found within Evernote? I'm going to give you my own personal 2 cents on this, and I really do think that personal productivity It's called personal for a reason. I was an Evernote user for, I mean, got to be over a decade, like since the beginning, probably a beta user. So I was a heavy Evernote user. I used it all the time, shared it with all my friends. It was great for a while, but I did find that information was getting buried, and finding what I need only by search is not necessarily super helpful or inspiring to me. And I found that information would just get buried. I find that the way that I use Notion is a lot more intentional, and I don't really have to jump around and search for what I need. And again, this is just a personal opinion of mine. I feel like if you're always having to search for your information, it means your information is maybe not optimally organized. So I rarely need to use the search because I know where everything lives, everything has a place, and it's in a very inspiring place to me. Like, it uses lots of images. I can nest many different types of information, like the fact that I can have a calendar alongside to-dos, alongside information, research, notes, all in the same place in a way that's very, very easy for me to access. That aligns with my brain. It inspires me. It works so well. And I find that I'm activating that information and making use of it in a better way, in a way that I wasn't with Evernote. If you don't have any friction and you're able to find what you need inside of your Evernote space, I think that's awesome. I think you should keep using Evernote. But to find what I need by a search also assumes that I know exactly what I'm searching for every time. And I like a more exploratory approach. I like to go into my Learn database and see cover images of the courses that I'm taking. Like, there's so much possibility in there that I find more inspiring and more activating. And that's what's important to me, is to make sure my space is built for creativity. But if your stuff is more technical, or again, like, everyone's approach is very different, and why we want to use that is very different. So there's really no right or wrong answer. This is just what works for me. But I don't necessarily need the sophisticated search engine. If that's a requirement for you, I think it's great. Like, as Craig mentioned, Evernote became a dumping ground. And that's exactly what I felt too. I just found I was getting in the habit of just kind of clipping everything to Evernote, just in case one day I might need that. And I feel like I behave a little differently in Notion. Notion has become a little bit more intentional. Now, one thing I have heard people say is that they still use Evernote for their capture, because you can capture very, very quickly in Evernote. And then Notion becomes the place that you sort of curate that next level of knowledge. So you're kind of, again, moving it into more action. So that's one way that I might kind of differentiate between the two tools. Not sure if that's helpful. Again, I think it's very personal, very opinionated. There's definitely some chatter in the chat there about that. Different people, different opinions. So I hope that helps. I still think, like, Evernote's a great tool, but I use it differently than I would use Notion. Okay, great. Okay, hello, Marie. Thanks for the information you're sharing. Very useful and inspiring. I like the concept of your Knowledge Hub /resources. How do you use it to support your daily tasks and assignments? How do you deal, if at all, with duplicates? Okay, so let me dive into my Knowledge Hub /resources. So, of course, it's going to make me log in again. Hang on a second here. Okay, so one of the changes that I've made is I've actually moved a lot of my resources back into a top level resources page, which I didn't have before, because they were mostly my resources and my husband doesn't necessarily use them, but I still think they're useful in a top level resources page. So you'll see I've got a Knowledge Hub here, but one thing I've done is I've created a Learn, basically I call this a contextual dashboard, which actually pulls in items from the Knowledge Hub again and again in different ways, filtered in different ways. So these are filtered by online courses that are in progress. This is courses that I've maybe finished, but I still want to come back to and review. Active books that I'm reading. I can open up any one of these. And you'll notice there's people in here, there's tags, there's my journal, and projects. So I can relate items in my Knowledge Hub to specific projects, and the other way around too. I can be in a project and I can either add resources in there, I can pull them in. If they are project specific resources, I would probably add them into the the body of the project. If it's a global piece of knowledge that's going to support multiple tasks and whatnot, then it would go into the Knowledge Hub. I don't really find I have any issues with duplicates. And I'm not sure if you want to clarify any issues that you might have had, but one thing you can do is, again, pull items from your Knowledge Hub into one of your projects and refine it to only say, just show me items that are associated with this project or you're tagged with this project. You can definitely only show the information that makes sense for you to show in any one given time. So there's so much you can do with your Knowledge Hub. Jamie asked, are those links to pages or are they all under Okie dokie? Are you referring to these resources here, Jamie? Let me know. So almost all of these are databases inside the resources page. I'm not sure if that clarifies. So yeah, let me know. What's your easiest way to get info into the resources? Okay, my home page, right? So my home page. So this is a combination of pages and databases. I would say most of these are pages with databases nested inside them. So almost all of these pages are kind of like, they're almost like mini home pages, if that makes sense. So I might have some text at the top and then a database of all of my clients, maybe active projects that we're working on together. So you can like bundle and kind of tuck information together, if that makes sense. So let me know, Jamie, if you want any clarification on that. So really, yeah, this becomes my homepage. Like almost everything either lives here or it's in a project or it's in my resources page. But day to day, I'm pulling in what I need into my weekly agenda. Let me know if that clarifies. Danny said, do you review all of the capture information in your resources or do things still get lost? Yeah, things do still sometimes get lost. I do have an area, I think at the bottom here, called review. I try to make it a habit as part of my weekly review that I review any articles that haven't been, or any pieces of content in the Knowledge Hub that haven't been summarized or tagged or assigned with something. So that kind of forces me to say, okay, you clipped some things into the Knowledge Hub, but now it's time to activate that information. Why did you save it? What are you associating it with? What are you tagging it with? And so that's something I try to do at least on a weekly basis. Sometimes at the end of the day, occasionally, sometimes things get lost, but I can always jump into the Knowledge Hub and just take a peek, like what are the things I saved long ago before I had better systems in place? And how can I improve the way that I'm consuming this information? And again, since, taking the Building a Second Brain course, I do feel like the way I am consuming information is a little different. I'm not just, saving every single resource that I could possibly ever need one day. I'm only saving things that I'm kind of committing to summarizing and pulling notes from and taking my time in there. And Boaz, if you can remember to, if possible, make sure to use the ask a question area so it doesn't get lost in the chat. Sometimes things can get lost. Okay, so let me know if that clarifies your Knowledge Hub question. I haven't really noticed any duplicates, so that's kind of what's been working for me. Someone was asking about managing a calendar so you could see deadlines and meetings which don't live in the same database. That is one of the trickiest parts of Notion for sure. And that's why I think you need like a client specific dashboard that pulls in all of your different projects. So here's an example, like this is my master task database here. But then under client tasks, I am pulling in all of their master task databases in the same spot. And these databases live in entirely separate workspaces. And similarly, like this is just a at a glance view, but I could do the exact same thing and say, client 1 actions, client 2 actions. So at least they all kind of live on the same page and pull them together. It's not perfect, but it's one way that you can, at least when you're in focus mode, that you can see all of that information at a glance. Hope that clarifies your calendar question there. I heavily use the new page button at the bottom of the sidebar. I previously overlooked it because it was so simple. Now I use it anytime I start a new note. I can type quickly and then select there without going to be saved, without changing my view. Yeah. Yeah, so I do not clutter up my works. I try not to clutter up my workspace. Like this is basically the workspace. There's not much more than that. Everything is pretty much a click or two away that I would ever need. And what I like about these contextual dashboards is they're pulling in everything I need when I'm ready to focus, everything I need when I'm in a learning mindset. And those aren't creating new databases. They're just pulling in databases that live elsewhere in my space. So hopefully you can't relate pages to other pages. You can mention other pages in text fields. So let me make a new task here. Let's see. I don't know if I have any text fields in here, but I mean, you can't, like, I can mention other pages that live elsewhere, right? Inside a task. So you can do it either at the task level or in the body. I could mention that page, or if you have a text field where you want to maybe call it content and it's text, and you could really just, like, I'll put one in here just for fun. Right? And you can, again, mention any content that lives elsewhere. That's sort of a workaround for connecting pages to a database entry without, you can't really create a proper database relation, but you can mention content that lives elsewhere, and that might kind of help you with that. Hopefully that helps clarify that. Cool. Do you use Notion to schedule your daily time, i.e. work on project 1 at 10 a.m., project 2 at 2 p.m.? No, I don't get that granular and time specific inside my Notion space. I do that in my calendar. So I use BusyCal. We can use Google Calendar. And yeah, I do assign specific blocks, especially if I know that I've got like a deep work block, then I know that might take at least an hour to 2 hours. So what I do in my calendar is I have repeating blocks. It's like client block 2 hours, client block 2 hours, content creation block 2 hours, whatever that looks like for you. And so I can take a look at what's on this week, and I can recreate those items and just rename the client block to like the specific client that I'm going to be working with for that time frame. Hopefully that helps clarify. I think that would get a little nutty for me personally to get that. Like, I'm not a granular detail person. I'm much more a high level person, like at a glance, you know, I want to get this done today, not necessarily like at 2 p.m. I'm a lot more sort of flexible that way. So to me, it wouldn't be helpful. But like, I know that in August setup, for example, if you joined us for the office hours last week, I know he was very specific on exactly what days he was going to be doing something. It's totally personal preference. Arsene says, hi, Marie, do you have a system in place or in mind that can serve as a backup for a full Notion setup? The more I optimize my Notion, the more I'm worried I'm going to lose the well-oiled productivity machine I've created if in the future there's a problem with Notion, with all the pages, daily notes, growing databases, etc. Do you have a way to back up your system? Thanks and love your content. I don't really have, I can't say that I do. I definitely I'm a very trusting person. I put a lot of trust into people and tools. And for me, the benefit of using Notion and the integration of all my sort of ideas and information, for me, outweighs the risk of what would happen if I lost it. I do think it's a great idea to export, whether it's your master task database or what have you, to export that information. Maybe it's Markdown, maybe it's HTML on a monthly basis, maybe, you know, so that information doesn't get lost, or especially your content hub or things like that. A lot of the content that I'm creating, though, still lives in Dropbox. It still lives elsewhere. So yeah, that is a risk for sure. And I would say I don't really have a system for that. It would be nice if you could, you know, export your data in a way that's a little bit more accessible. I know you can export from Markdown, but yeah, not sure if that helps. Basically, no, I don't have a system. It is, yeah, it's a little risky for sure. Hi, Maria. Remember in some video of yours where you showed your weekly planner, somehow you managed to shrink the width of your task database in Kanban view to fit the page instead of having to scroll sideways to see the categories on the far right. Can you show how you did that again? I can't find the original clip. Let's hope that my weekly agenda doesn't have anything too personal in it at the moment. Okay, so this is my weekly agenda. It uses a lot of roll-ups and they're pulled from here. So what I do is I have a Kanban board that pulls in my journal and a Kanban that pulls in my actions database. And so you can change your properties here to medium, small, whatever you want. And then if you want to, you can hide, hide Saturday, hide Sunday. So it's not perfect, that bar still shows up, but you could also tuck that into a toggle if you didn't like the bar. I prefer the medium view, and I think I'm a little bit zoomed in right now, just so you guys can see my screen okay. Usually I kind of view this a little smaller, but this is the sort of zoomed in version. And I like doing it this way, Monday to Friday, I can see everything, and this is like my planning for the week. And then once the week is complete and I'm doing my weekly review, I switch it to review mode. And then that has a summary of what was completed, exercise, happiness, 3 words that describe the day, etc. So the views actually just shift and the image shows my photo of the day instead of the cover image. So there's just lots you can do that to me just makes it feel creative and fun. So I don't know if that clarifies with the Kanban view, but basically you can, get it aligned to only show what you want to see in here. It does still always have like that little bit of extra, which is kind of unfortunate. But at least everything that I need to see is right here. Hopefully that helps clarify. Cool. Excellent. Okay, so let's jump into something not so personal. Okay, you mentioned that tasks are the smallest part of a project. What do you do if you have a tiny standalone task? Example, letter post. Do you make a project specifically for that? Personally, no, I would not make a project. I think I lean more toward the actions database than projects. To me, project are like multi-step, anything that requires like multiple steps and a deadline and an outcome. But something like posting a letter, I mean, you could even do something like this to say, post letter today, 2 p.m. Right? And that doesn't even need to be added to my database if I don't want to. So having like a quick capture thing too for things that don't require any additional information could be helpful for you. Cool. Let me know if that helps clarify. And I know everyone's got like a different opinion about sort of projects versus tasks and that sort of thing. Like what will people make into a project? I lean more toward if there's like not that many steps and not that many parameters, I will just make it an action and it will stay. And again, you'll notice here I've got like deep work. So deep work is something that it's going to take focus. Maybe there's multiple steps to it, but it's probably something I can do within a day. If it's going to take multiple days, if it's going to, I'm going to have to coordinate with my assistant or something, I would turn it into a project. Oh, there's a great question from Marcos. Okay, so when you use a master task database in a project with a client, what prevents that client from getting access to the master database and not just the customized view that you create with the information that's relevant to that client only? Marcos, I do not use my master task database to collaborate with my clients. They do not, nobody has access to my master task database except my husband, because the two of us coordinate together. So each client has their own master task database that lives inside of their client portal. So if I have one of my clients is K9HS, we have a project called K9HS. Inside of there's a client portal. And so I can have all of my notes about the project in the body of that project, invoices, notes, kind of behind the scenes thinking. And then I have a client portal that lives inside there that is like her homepage. And she only has access to that, which actually shows up in the sidebar, K9HS HQ, right? So she only sees that as a top level item. She doesn't actually see kind of where that lives in my space. Now, in most cases, over time, most of my clients have evolved into getting their own Notion set up. And then I've actually been able to Command Shift P, move that entire project over into their space, which is awesome. Arjen asks, Marie, do you manually create entries for each day in the daily journal? I hope there's an easier way. And sorry, let me know if that clarifies your question. I know there's a lot of nuance when you're sharing projects with clients. But yeah, let me know if that clarifies. Okay. So yes, I'm going to show you, I'll show you my process, Arjen, because as you were saying, like it's a little bit manual, right? Which I actually don't mind this because there's a process that I go through. Maybe this is annoying for people. I know some people actually like to pre-fill their databases with a bunch of entries from Google spreadsheets and they'll move it in. But I go through a process here. So what I can do is create a new view. Let's say, and actually I'm going to duplicate this view because it's often easier to duplicate a view than it is to recreate one from scratch. So copy of this week. So this would be my process for setting up my week. Choose the date, so the 27th, and is before the 3rd. And you'll see like Monday through Friday is already there. So if I create a new entry for what was that, April 27th, open that up. April 27th. Okay, now you'll notice I've got a bunch of templates here. I just click Monday, and there's Monday's entries. Everything's already in there. And then I choose a win the day task. That is like the most important thing that needs to happen on that day. And I can pull that from my database or I can create a new one. And if I complete that task, I mark that off as yes, I won the day. 3 words that describe the day. So most of the stuff happens at the end of the day. The first thing that happens is I just create Monday, click on the template, all the information gets spit up. And then over the course of the day, I can rate my effectiveness, my energy, my happiness, what I was watching on Netflix. I'm pulling in from the entertainment database, meetings, sales, gratitude, all of this stuff. When I fill this out, all of that gets rolled up into this information up here, all of it. So it actually doesn't take that long. April 28th, open that up, click on Tuesday, pick the task for that day. That's the most important thing. And each day has a theme, right? So I go through and just do my entries, and then I know what the priority and what the focus was for each of those days. I'm just checking the chat here to see if there's any clarifying questions. Quick follow-up question. How do you fill the date as today? So some people will put today, for example, let me open this up. Some people like to say, instead of putting the date, they'll actually put today, but I make reference and search those calendar entries from other things when I'm connecting up my Knowledge Hub to my journal and things like that. I need to be able to type the date and know it exactly. And so because today is a contextual piece of information that updates dynamically, I don't find that super helpful. I want it to always be consistent and say what it needs to say. So I click on Wednesday, there we go. So it actually doesn't really take that long, to a minute maybe, to put all of those entries in for the week. And then that's my at a glance, what's happening, and then my tracker for my moods and everything. And again, which if I go into review to show the review, that will show like a photo of the day, all the moods, all of that gratitude and everything kind of gets summarized. Hopefully that makes sense. And I know it's definitely a way more advanced way of using Notion, but I love it. It works for me. I've been doing my daily journal for like a year and a half. I have so much incredible data in there. I know what days of the week I'm most effective. I know what I've been reading. Like there's so much incredible data in there that the more you use it and the more it gets filled up. It's so fun. Okay. Oh, right. Yeah. One thing I do need to change as well. Like when you open that up, you do have to select the date. So that is something that you need to do. Okay. Just checking the chat here. Maybe there's an easier way of doing that, but I like that intentionality. Just clicking on it, I've got the template set up for it. Makes me happy. Hey, Tyler, welcome. Okay. Oh, okay. Erica says, I'd love to see what aspects of people you capture in your people database. What's the safest way? I think I can just open the people database. Yeah, it should be fine to show you this. Okay. So these are people that I know, people that I'm collaborating with, people whose content I clip, like, I referenced Tiago Forte quite a bit. I really enjoyed his Building a Second Brain course. So I associate tags with a person. So these are conversations that Tiago is having. Website URL, Twitter, Knowledge Hub. So these are items that I've stored and saved that either Tiago has written, like Building a Second Brain is a course. And I can actually see the type here too. So podcast, articles, guides, whatever, all of that's saved there. And then I do these little roll-ups just to see, I've saved eight items of the Knowledge Hub from Tiago. These tags are actually roll-ups from those Knowledge Hub items as well, because sometimes, for example, project knowledge management is here, but I haven't actually associated that with him here. So I can add that personal knowledge management here. And Content Hub, so any content that I've created that is related to Tiago. So, Tiago wrote the article on building a para method, and I showed how I use it in my workspace. I did a guest workshop for Tiago. I include that here. Notes and ideas, the lovely Maria Aldry. And then I give them a role and a context. So he's an influencer and a collaborator. Here's how much money I've spent. So this is actually a roll-up of the price or like cost item in the Knowledge Hub. So if it's something I've paid for, like an online course or something like that, that's going to roll up that money here. So over time, I can actually see like how much how much have I paid for online courses over the past however many years. I can see the meeting that I had with him. Love notes, affiliate. So if I'm an affiliate for Building a Second Brain, that affiliate code will be in there. I can post it in here. Various inspiration, words and wisdom, copy stocking. These are very specific to my setup, of course. And then just some like notes in here about him and his work and whatever. So that's one way that I use the people database. If you just wanted to see kind of what gets collected, Megan Mins here, right? Productivity. And I don't manually go through and fill out all of these. Like these kind of get filled out as I go. It's not like I imported a database full of people. It's just sort of as I clip an article into the database and I'm, add the author. Oh, I tag them. It happens very organically. It's not something I sat down and was like, oh man, I need to build out a people database and fill it all and connect it all. That I think would be procrastinating. So this has definitely evolved over time. And you'll notice not all of these fields get filled out. So it's sort of a pretty organic process. I hope that helps clarify. Do you pull tasks from your client projects back into your master task? And if so, how? I could, but that would actually create a lot of different relations in my task database. And because I share my master task database with my husband, he would see all those entries of like this client's task, that client, and it would kind of get a little bit nutty. One thing that I do is tasks that I am responsible for, I will often still put in my own master task database. And then I can actually drag that and move that into their master task database and mark it as done so that I can track it in my own space. But once it's complete, I can move it into their space so that they know what I'm doing. That's another way also that you kind of keep your master task database clean, if that makes sense. Okay, some clarifying questions about that weekly agenda came in. The templates, when you click on Wednesday, how does the date come to that specific day in the date column? Okay, like if I add something here, I think it actually always defaults to the end date. So I've got this filter here, ends on May 3rd. For some reason, it just always defaults to the end of week date. It's like a weird thing. So you do have to remember to set that date. Okay. Yeah, text expander. Okay, just checking the chat here. When you select the date, go to the format date and relative is at the bottom if you want to date something for the future, you may need to manually input them, but depends on how you want it to work. Exactly. Okay, so I'm just going to dive into the ask a question area here. So I think we answered Marco's question about the difference between them, like your own master task database and your clients' databases. Awesome, procrastinating planning. Yeah, I know I'm guilty of it. I mean, you guys have seen my space. I am always improving it, always tweaking it. But I think there are times where there's certain kind of work that is it's kind of time wasting. It's not really making, like, I could go back into my knowledge hub and like hook up all of those properties and give them all of that data, but that's actually not serving me until I actually need to use that piece of information. That it's like when I'm activating it, then I can go in and add those additional properties. But I think it would just be sort of a make work project to add all that stuff. So I hope that helps. Okay, another question about Para. And let me just jump into my areas database so you can, or page rather. Okay, so Andrew said, I have a question on Para. Is it okay to create a sub area? For example, engineering at the top level and then product A, product B. Otherwise, there would be a ton of projects under engineering. Also, how would you recommend giving context to business goals in Para? Where would the list of goals live? And how do you remind a team member why their work on a task or project is impactful to the business? That is, okay, a couple questions in here. That's really awesome. I love when you say, is it okay? Well, of course it's okay. I mean, no one's gonna be like, you used Para wrong. But yes, of course, you can set it up any way that's gonna make the most sense for your team. And again, something to clarify, Para is about organizing digital information. Notion does more than organize digital information, right? We're actually talking about task management. We're talking about alignment, goal setting, strategic planning. There's such a bigger thing around that I think you really should be tailoring and customizing Para. Like you have, use it as a starting point and then make it work for your team. So for you specifically, there'd be a ton of projects under engineering. I mean, there's so many ways you could do this, and I'd have to know a little bit more about your business. Could you not have all the projects in one project, but give them a type of engineering? And then even within that, you might have subtypes, and that would be a select or a multi-select or something like that. I think it depends how much crossover there might be between those two databases. I wouldn't want you to like create more work for yourself by having like two project databases to manage, but you might find engineering actually needs like their own set of projects. They're separate maybe from other departments, or like I think product A and product B would probably be, those might actually be their own projects. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. I basically encourage you to, if something's not fitting and there's friction, definitely like explore and experiment, and you don't have to do it exactly the way that it's prescribed. And sometimes it does take a bit of play, unfortunately, to say like, oh, this feels a bit clunky. I'm always having to click into this. It's a bit, it's not perfect. Yeah, definitely. I mean, even tasks, for example, I know that it's not like tasks or actions have their own category. Like you could say tasks are an area. They're also like, there's so many ways you could do that. So I think we really have to think a little bit differently within Notion about how to apply Para. And I think it's just a great starting point. But for example, I could say activities is a page, and then inside that I have operation. But to me, that's adding way too many clicks. So I almost see these as like these are areas, but this is also an area, right? So I've almost kind of given these subcategories. You get to decide. And as long as it works for your business and you know where to find things and you feel organized, I say have at her, have a good time with Para and making it your own. Could you explain or show us how to build an archive on Notion? I will say the archive is probably the page that I touch the least. I almost never go there. It's a graveyard of things and ideas and whatever. But one thing, again, we sort of talked about this at the beginning a little bit, and I'm not sure if I've fully clarified this, but I would go through my ideas or my master task database and I would filter it by the project that is complete. And I would actually Command-Shift-P, move all of those tasks right into that project, into the body of the project, so that they're stored somewhere. I personally don't care about maintaining all of the metadata along with those tasks necessarily, but as long as the task body has all of that information that you want, move all of those tasks into your project, and then I would move my project into here. So we have a projects archive that is kind of a mirror of the projects here with fewer properties. It just doesn't have all the relations and everything. And I just would move that entire project into the projects archive. It is very, very rare that I have ever gone back in there to access something, because again, most of the global resources and things like that are stored in the Knowledge Hub, and I also still have those files on my computer and things like that. So archive is like the least exciting, least used aspect of my Notion space. It's just a page with a dump of other pages and a couple other databases, and like projects that are finished, completed, or canceled. And the nice thing too is if you actually move a page into, or like a completed project into your archive, and then you decide you actually want to reactivate it again, you can move it back into your projects and it will have all those properties back again. So even though they disappear when you move them into a page, you can actually reactivate them again if you were to reactivate that project. So I'm not sure if that helps clarify. I don't think there's a ton to build. I just use it as a page. It's kind of a dumping zone. It's not very exciting. I hope that helps clarify. Okay, trivial question. How do we reuse a custom icon elsewhere within Notion? Page X icon, page Y icon. So there's a few ways you could do this. It depends on how many of those pages you're making. I have text expander shortcuts set up for my most commonly used icons, and that'll be either like Dropbox links or wherever you're storing those images. You can host them on your site or whatever. And those Dropbox snippets actually just spit out the URL to that. That's one way that you could do it. One is to make page templates. So every time you create a new page template that has that type, that icon. But yeah, text expander snippets for URLs for the images. So for example here, link. I just use text expander snippets. Let's see, icon, that kind of thing. That just spits out the icons. I hope that makes sense. Can you talk about your tag database? I see that you've related tags database, but you also have a text tabs property on the same page. How and why are they different? Great question. Let's jump into. I love my master tag database. It is the best. It's the best decision I ever made. Highly recommend doing this in your Notion space. And I did get a question from someone that is related to this, that you can wrap the cells on your table. So I had someone that had, big wide table, and they were like, oh, how do I make things, show up underneath one another? So I wrap the cells just to make that a little bit more readable. Totally depends on your view. Okay, so you might have noticed that some things that I save, there's like the tag selector that's a multi-select property, and then you'll notice I have a related database here. When I started creating a tag database, or when I started tagging items, I was just using the select property, but there's no way to see that same tag across all of the items of your workspace, right? So I haven't deleted the old tagging. I just introduced this new relational database until I knew that I was going to use this. And so I've doubled down on this, and it is awesome. I highly, highly recommend doing a master tag database. So let me show you, for example, what's in one of these if I open this up. So best self, what I've done is I've actually organized these by the quantity of content saved in the Knowledge Hub. So I know I have 31 items that are saved in the Knowledge Hub that are tagged with best self. So if I open up best self, you can see this is linked to my people database. So here are the people that are talking about this. And in fact, let's add Megan Mins in there. I know she's talking about best self. Notes and ideas. So I've got 9 notes and ideas saved here. There was like 31 items in the Knowledge Hub here. Type. So this is actually a roll-up that's pulling from the Knowledge Hub, just so I can see, Is it courses that I'm taking? Is it audiobooks? Is it whatever format is just being pulled from the Knowledge Hub? Inspiration. So I often save examples of websites, sales pages, things that I like for visual inspiration. So I can see other products basically that are in the same vein of best self. Words and wisdom. These are quotes that I'm saving. I can jump into any of these and kind of take a peek at them. Right, and see who said it. And then there's my Readwise piece as well. And I can jump back into best self. So you can kind of rabbit hole, but like stay in the same spot and not go too far. I can also see 12 problems. These are, again, from Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain. They're like questions that you kind of have as guiding principles for your projects and your life. And then, yeah, entertainment, swipe files, reference. So you see, I don't always use all of these for every piece, but it's pretty handy, right? Like you can see, obviously, all the stuff I've clipped related to Notion and who else is talking about Notion. Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful stuff in here. So I have options now, like to the previous question about Evernote versus Notion and Search. I've created my own space so that if I want to write a post about money or whatever, like I can jump in and look at the things that I've saved or that I've clipped, who's talking about it, what were those things, what were those notes and ideas that popped up as a result of that. And just, I can go at the tag level or I can go at the person level. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember Mike Michalowicz wrote that book, Profit First. You know, I can really kind of rabbit hole and collect information, but it's all like nicely tucked together. When you say clipped, are you talking about URLs or screenshots? So Hannah, I have a full page screen capture that I will save a picture of the full page because I know websites change pretty often and I want to see a visual of that. So I can actually go, I mean, I can jump in and show you what one of those inspiration boards looks like. These tend to be very visual inspiration, right? So I will take a snapshot of the entire page, clip it using the Notion clipper. I will save it right into my inspiration dashboard, and then we'll go through and add additional information. Cool. Yeah, master tag database is so great, so great. Furkan said, so if I understand correctly, once an icon is uploaded with a Notion, there's no apparent way to reuse it. Yes, you're right. That is true. That would be an amazing feature if once you've added something, you've got a library that you can kind of pull from. Yeah. It's kind of unfortunate, but the text expander is the workaround. So Jude, hopefully that clarifies why I use the tag database, because it kind of holds and connects so many different pieces of information. And similarly, I'm gonna show you, I think it's the notes and ideas, the notes and ideas one that has, like, let's say I open this up. Okay. This is kind of cool. Something I'm experimenting with is my notes and ideas. It looks very similar to the Knowledge Hub in terms of its properties, but it's a place for me to like brain dump, like things I found, things I want to explore. You know, I wanted to experiment with live streaming. And so I had this status of like, pursue me. And I really like Jason Langsdorf's live stream series. So I had a little note here that's like, love this approach to teaching. And then here at the bottom, I have a roll up. Let me just check what's happening here. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling from everything I've tagged. I'm pulling items from the Knowledge Hub that are tagged with this as well. So this almost becomes like a, you might also like, or remember that you also saved these things that might be connected to the thing that you're talking about. So you kind of create your own recommendation engine, if you will, which is pretty cool. I was trying that with the people property as well. Tags and people, but then you will find that you get a bit of repetition here because Thomas Frank might be tagged with YouTube and video, so he's showing up twice. So I'm experimenting with that, but it's kind of like a mini recommendation engine, which is kind of cool. So hopefully that helps clarify that. Cool. Excellent. Okay, so Kobe asked, I attend a Polytech school that has very unreliable web access and makes it almost impossible to use Notion. Is there a way to be able to take notes for a given day in one spot, i.e. page, while offline and organize later when home? Is there a way to be able to access certain material while offline, i.e. notes for the week connected to topics such as modules, homework, etc.? I'd love to use Notion if I can access. I know that Notion's offline is not fully featured, not fully functional. So I can't necessarily speak to that. And I don't know if anyone here has experience with that in the chat, if there's anything that you've noticed, but I do think they're offline. It is something they're working on. It's not quite there yet. So it is a little dangerous, I think, to rely on it totally, unfortunately. So I don't know that I have an answer for you there, unfortunately. Cool. Thanks for coming, Hannah. Okay, Carlene asked, what have you found easiest to enter data for resources, library, books, videos, online classes? Ooh, voice entry, right. So I don't think, Notion has a baked in sort of voice entry. I think it depends on the source of your data. Library, books, videos, online classes. I mean, I'm always using the Notion Clipper to send things into my Knowledge Hub. I imagine if you're storing a lot of data, you may want separate databases for library, books, videos, etc. I store almost everything in the Knowledge Hub. Can I upload from notes? I mean, you can import. Markdown. I think it depends on what format you can export your notes from. Yeah, like you can import. Kimmer said, I record voice memos on my phone and then store them inside Notion. I use Evernote for offline notes and then migrate it to Notion. That's what Sage says. Yeah, I guess it depends on your data. I do a lot of copy paste, exporting notes or importing CSV files. As Kimmer said, recording voice memos on your phone and then storing them inside Notion. Are there other tools that you're using other than notes that I'm not sure if I necessarily have more to add on that question. I'm going to think about that, Carlene, though. I know that you've sent me an email, so maybe we can dig into that a little further about the actual capturing process, go a little deeper. Sandra was suggesting something simple, like starting notes in a Word doc, saving it to your desktop, and then popping it into Notion when you get home. Aletha was asking, is there a chance that Notion will allow formulas to auto-populate the name field in a database or to have any kind of auto-population for the name field? And then, one of the comments said that Airtable does this. I mean, hey, this is great customer research for Notion, right? The questions that people are asking and curious about. I don't necessarily know what their plans are for that, but I mean, Notion definitely, they check out these questions and hopefully they can look into that, clarify that. Hopefully we can get more detail on that. Do you have a separate page for notes and drafts, or do you take notes on your resources directly? Love your content. I do take notes in the resources directly. So as an example, if I look at the book that I'm reading, I take notes about this book usually right inside the body of the book. If there's something that is getting like activated for me in terms of like content I want to create, or like there's a thread I want to go down, I will probably create a new note, and I can even create it right from here. So notes and ideas, and I can kind of go down a rabbit hole and draft something there. But generally the intention of taking these notes here is so that at the end, I would create a summary at the top that's based on my own kind of takeaways from the book. Totally personal preference. And I think part of that depends how much you consume, how much you create, how much writing that you do. Over time, I might find that I want to have a separate, drafts. And I would do that in a separate place than the actual book that I'm reading. But I tend to do things in the same spot. Like if I have a course inside of the Knowledge Hub, I'm taking notes about the course inside that course entry in the Knowledge Hub. I'm not separating that out into notes and ideas. Cool. Oh, and there was one question that I don't know that we totally clarified about the sort of goals and OKRs across team members. And I think this next question might relate to that. So whoever asked that, maybe we can we can clarify that. But Arjun said, I have 2 OKR systems, one for my business, shared workplace, and one for my personal life. Is there any way to merge the 2? I cannot combine the 2 in one database for privacy. Okay, so there are a few answers to this question. Like always with Notion, there's like, which one of 100 ways do we want to do this? Okay, an example of this is that my husband and I both do sprint planning together, and we also have our own weekly agendas that are private. And so we connect up our own agendas. I can't see any of Ben's because I don't have permission or privilege to that. So this shows up for me, but these don't show up for Ben, and they show up blank for him. So that might be one way of doing it, that you could create a relation, right? So maybe you've got the high level goals and maybe the outcomes, or I'm not sure which part of that are need to be private, but anything in the top level database is going to be visible to anyone. But you can have relations within that database that nobody else can see if they're tied to your own private databases, if that makes sense. I don't think it would necessarily be easy. I wonder if creating a dashboard where you can see the company OKRs as well as your personal ones in the same page would be more helpful than actually trying to connect those 2 databases. But that's something to consider, is that you can have, and that's why we have like Ben here, Marie here, is that we can kind of connect this up to our own information and not worry about the others seeing it. Hopefully that makes sense. Oh, shared spaces. Oh my gosh, I did not even realize that we already passed 11 o'clock. I am fine to continue going. I know there are still plenty of questions to answer. So I'm going to stick around and answer these. Obviously, if you can't, oh, that's amazing to hear, Arjun. Thank you. If you can't stay, no worries. These questions are timestamped. So if you are watching the replay and you go through the questions, you can actually click on the specific questions and it will jump to the specific spot in the video. So something to be aware of. I'm going to keep going, try and answer these questions. But yeah, feel free to take off if your question's already been answered, or you just need to get your day started. So thanks for joining us. All right. Shared spaces. Can you walk us through how your private databases and pages are integrated into your shared spaces? What's the workflow? How do you decide what your clients can and can't see? Do you have granular control over that, or do they just see everything? Okay, great question. This is not necessarily a simple answer. But what I will say is, you do have granular control. You can decide what your clients can see for sure. I create client hubs, and those live inside of my project spaces. So I can't necessarily show exactly, but what I can do, so let me take a look at the client template here. So you see, this is a new client project. I'm going to create a new client project here. We'll just call it like testing client project. And here I've got a client dashboard. That's a page inside. So when I open this up, this is the page that I would share with my client. I would invite them by email into this page. You'll see they've got their own task database here. They've got their own milestone calendar, assets and resources, meetings. Sometimes I'll pull in items from my own inspiration that I'm like, oh, I think you need to check out this website, or the way this person does their marketing, or whatever. All of this can live on this page. Of course, this page can look however you want, but this becomes the place that the 2 of you would collaborate together. And then this task database is the thing I would copy the link to, and I would embed that here on this page as well in the client tasks, so that again, I can always see all of my client tasks in one place. And they only ever see access to that hub. That's the only thing that they would get access to. Now, in my experience, most people, after having worked together in that hub, are like, whoa, Notion's amazing. And we actually move them into creating their own Notion account, which then they add me as a user, and I will actually move that entire client hub over into their space, and then it's happening in their space. I can still, in that process, copy that master task database and work from it within my own space. So that again, I don't And I can, of course, jump into their space and go check out their stuff there. But if I want to pull it in and make sure I'm not missing anything, I can pull it in right here and filter it to be like, show me anything that's due this week. And I can see my tasks and I can see their tasks all in one place. How do you decide what your clients can and can't see? Yeah, so I basically have a template. Every client can see the same thing, and I just pull those into my own workspaces. Mark says, is their own task database a part of your larger database? No, not connected whatsoever. Sometimes I will, like you'll notice I still have client stuff in here, right? Like publish Ianla's resource page. I know that that's the thing that needs to get done. And I just, like she doesn't necessarily, it's almost like a task that she doesn't necessarily need to see. It's more for me to kind of keep top of mind, and you'll see a little icon image. So I've got, I do have task templates for the clients that I do things for quite a bit. Once that's finished, this task is done, I could actually just drag that, like move to, and I can move that into her tasks database to kind of keep a record of what's been done. But no, I do not connect my client databases to my own database. So hopefully, like there's a whole process around that. For sure, it's definitely a bit of an art to get your spaces set up to do that. But that's what's been working for me so far. I hope that helps clarify. Alejandro asks, hi Marie, I'm a teacher and I use Notion for my lessons. I use the para method with William Nutt's philosophy of a bulletproof workspace. However, I'm now having a hard time finding a way to efficiently connect all the variables in my system: lesson plan, homework, new vocabulary, corrections. I would love your insight on a way to go about this. I feel like that's more of that almost might be a more valuable live stream, like build with me session. Like maybe Alejandro, if you're open to that, maybe we could actually do like a lesson plan build out, because I don't think that's going to be a quick answer for how to do that. And I think your use case is actually quite common. I do a lot of consulting with people that are trying to like manage their students and that sort of thing. So maybe if you want to reach out to me directly, maybe we could chat about doing that as a live stream and maybe have you on with me, and we could maybe workshop what that could look like. That could be fun. Yeah, okay, cool. So maybe you can shoot me an email and we can, if you could break down your scenario, we can go a little bit deeper. Okay. Tasks and archiving. In a previous demo, you've shown your relational property between your journal and your tasks. So if you're moving your tasks into a project, do you lose that relationship in the journal? Yes, if I move my tasks outside of the master task database, I will lose that relationship in the journal. Yep, that's true. And honestly, that's why I don't really move stuff all that often. And we did go through a very big archiving process at the end of the year, where we actually turned the relational database property into a text property, which then turns all of them into mentions instead, and then created a new relationship to a brand new Fresh Start 2020 master task database. So that was something that we did. Okay. Okay, SJ asked, can you help us understand how you handle recurring tasks? It's so simple. This is what I do. Recurring. I have a property called recurring, and these are things that I need to do every week. And one thing that I do here is I can actually at mention, so like April, whatever, I published whatever, and I can actually include the ConvertKit link in there, or even pull it from the Content Hub. Actually, I don't think this is connected to my Content Hub, but yeah, I just included it in here and then reset the date. Like, cool, next one needs to happen on Friday. Send me a reminder. It's not perfect, but like it's always there. It's just a responsibility that always needs to get done. You could also, if visually, I know sometimes people feel like it's just a list of things to do that is like never gets checked off. I might even want to tuck together something like a toggle and just say like recurring tasks, but those are always visible. So it's like today, next, later, and always responsible for. That's what works for me. I keep it really simple. Hopefully that helps clarify. Do you embed many PDFs into Notion? I'm holding back from dumping loads of PDFs in there. Hannah, I'm curious too what your specific use case is with your PDFs. I think it would depend how you're using them and if they're for work, like are you a designer? It would depend, because you can of course have a URL property where you could, you know, post like a Dropbox link or something like that. I would say I don't put a ton of PDFs into Notion personally. I haven't really needed to. Sometimes I reference out other files with the URL, but yeah, Hannah, let me know if there's, maybe your business is a little bit more specific and there's a reason that you might need to pull those in. Yeah, let me know if you can clarify in the chat and maybe we can go a little bit deeper on that. I don't use it a ton. Okay. Yeah, so we covered the journaling. Okay. How do you organize quotes that resonate with you? I can go to my words and wisdom. This is a pretty simple database. There's like not a ton of entries. You can see there's only 24 in here. And yeah, I can highlight and clip something, send it right here. I use Readwise as well, which kind of highlights and summarizes things from your books, from your Kindle and things like that, or from Instapaper. And so if I like one and I want to go back to it, I just clip it using the Notion clipper, send it into here, or while I'm reading, I'll paste something in there. So that one's a pretty simple use case. Hopefully that, basically I just tag them with the person, tag them with the tag, and yeah, that's all I really do. Thank you so much. You are welcome. Okay. Want a challenge because I can't get my head around this. Meal plan. Select a recipe from the database. Each recipe is made up of ingredients. When selected, the meal plan creates a list of ingredients, which I can cross-check with the freezer. Okay, Simon, did you watch our session with Conrad? Because we did an office hours and he built this totally bananas meal tracking system. Like, I think the meal planning was one of my earlier experiments, and it was probably the first video I ever made on YouTube. It was like, oh, check out how I'm using my meal planning. And then Conrad took it to a whole other level, and it's pretty wild. And it does, yeah, cross-check. Do I have this? Do I not have this? So Simon, if you have not seen that yet, his menu planner is pretty cool, and you should definitely check that out. I'll find that, and I'm going to summarize some of the, oh, good. Okay, so you only just came across my wisdom. How fun. Yeah, so Conrad, I think it was gamifying your productivity. We did a past session on that. So it's on YouTube. Or again, you can check out the Crowdcast, all the list of all of our past events, and check them out. That your mind will be blown when you see how he did that one. So I'm not sure if he shares his template for that. Yeah, Sandra said that's a must-watch past office hours. It's pretty great. He's got an online community as well, so definitely go check that out, because I think I couldn't even begin to start answering that within a couple of minutes. I think it's a pretty intense system. Cool. Hi, Marie. Might be a newbie question, but do you offer a step-by-step course or template that I can use Notion and build a homepage or resource page, and most important, figure out how tags can be used through Notion that are universal, that I cannot figure out, like if I want to search for one throughout everything? Yes, I do actually have a course. I don't talk about it super widely because it's still a work in progress, but I will share the link with you. It's called Notion Mastery, and I go through all of that stuff that you just asked. I'll paste it in the sidebar. I think we have a couple Notion Mastery folks in the sidebar. I think Sandra, right? Yeah, Tehran slowly making his way through it. Yeah, and actually it's actually delivered on Notion. So we've got office hours, private office hours that I do with folks. I've got all of the templates are in here, starter and advanced templates. I have little change logs. So every time I add new information, I'm adding that there. We've got learning the tool. You can see some are still needing to be fleshed out, putting structure in place, developing processes and workflow, using Notion with a team. And we just got tons more resources and stuff in here. So one thing I'm working on at the moment is creating a learning guide. You guys can kind of see behind the scenes. But what I'm trying to do is, people learn this stuff differently. Some people like to dive in and just get their hands dirty. Other people kind of want to step by step. And what I'm going to try to do is summarize. If you just want to do X, make sure you know this, make sure you do this. Because I don't think we need to know, you don't necessarily need to learn about Notion before using it. I do think people need to kind of jump in a little bit and get their hands dirty. And it's way easier to design a space that has information in it. So yeah, thank you for asking that, and thanks for the folks who've taken the course. And yeah, in office hours we do a lot more like workshopping, where people can share the screen and we can workshop something and kind of talk through something. And there's lots of other students who figured out interesting ways of doing things too that can kind of help with that. So yeah, thanks for asking that. Hopefully that helps. Okay, do you use tags to separate personal and business and projects within each space? For example, for a client, you might have a range of different projects and tasks associated to each project. How do you manage that and pull everything together? And Marcos, I'm not sure if you'd asked this before, or if you feel like we've covered this, or if you want me to go a little bit deeper on that. To separate personal and business projects within each space. I'm curious what you mean when you say within each space. Because all of our, we have like personal and business projects here, like household stuff, garden cleanup. Don't know if I have anything in there yet. Repot the plants. Like all of our projects live in here, whether they're for clients, whether they're course related or whatever. And so for me, the tasks are related to the projects, whether it's personal or client related or what have you. Everything is kind of connected. I don't really do, like, the only separation that happens is in the client portal, right? That the client has their own tasks and their own resources and things like that. But I still sort of manage my day-to-day tasks through my focus. Okay, cool. The tag database covers it. Okay, hopefully that helps. Yeah, master tag database, awesome. Cool. Integration between calendar daily task. So I'm not sure if, I'm not sure I totally follow your question, but you can view these on a calendar, right? You can create a calendar view of any database. So as long as you have a master task database, you can view this stuff on a calendar. It's probably going to show everything on there, right? But right, you can view this stuff and also increase those properties, show that they're done, they're not done, they're overdue or whatever. I personally rarely view the calendar view, but if that's helpful for you, you should totally do that. I just kind of have this sort of due today. Also, I have like a today would be nice, and that's organized by energy, but due today is the ones that are like, there's a consequence if those aren't done. So not sure if that clarifies, but unless you're talking about having like an actual separate calendar database and a task database. But you can, unfortunately, with Notion, you can't have a calendar that pulls in dates across all databases. Wouldn't that be magical and lovely? But no, you can't do that. But you can create a calendar view of any of your databases. In the focus page, could you show us how to do the dates on the left column? Yeah, so columns, it's so funny. Columns are like one of those funny, tricky things about Notion that take a while. So just hit enter a bunch of times when you're in a blank page, and you can just drag, columns around here. Look for that blue vertical line, and you'll see that there's actually 2 columns here now, right? And I'm going to give them background colors again, just so you can see what's actually happening here. Okay, so let's say this week. And then when you hover over the space between 2 columns, that gives you a selector, so you can choose how big you want it. I can add a link to a page if I want to. And then I can duplicate databases, I can paste databases, any of the other databases that you have here that you want to paste here. You can also, if you duplicate, that will maintain the same views. If you copy an original database, those views are not going to be retained, which is unfortunate. Okay. and then just drag that into here, and you've got your two beautiful columns. Hopefully that helps clarify. You might need to play with Notion a little bit to get a feel for those moving columns around. You will notice one funny thing is like you can't actually, you can't use a database to create a column. Like you'll notice the option doesn't appear to create a column. You actually have to create that column first, and then you can drag your database in there. Okay, I think we clarified that question about the manual entries in the journal. Okay, delete. If you have a task database with your clients, how do you coordinate it with your personal task? I think some of these we might have already covered in that I don't necessarily, I've got like my personal tasks here. There are some client tasks that are just things I've assigned for myself that the client doesn't need to see. But if I'm sort of actively engaged with my clients, we're working together usually inside of their space. So looking at what needs to happen in the whole client dashboard, right? When I open this up and I see like everything that needs to get done, I do my weekly planning. And so if I know that I'm working on Ianla's project on Tuesday morning between 10 and 12, I can jump into her space and do all of the task management things I need to do inside of her space. I can still do that in my space if I want to, but I feel like all of her assets and everything, she actually has her own Notion account now. So I would go and switch over to her account, do what I got to do. And so these become almost high-level reminders of what I need to do, but all of her assets and resources are actually living inside of her Notion account, and I can jump into there and do the work that I need to do. And that's why batching is so helpful, right? Batching your time and only doing what's most important at any one given time. Hopefully that helps clarify that. Cool. When you filter your task database according to the date range that the page has, instead of filter 1 week from now or within 1 week, at the moment I'm using 2 individual filters that I need to update each time I start a new week. Yes, that is something that I do because 1 week from now it's like a dynamic filter. So when I'm doing my and actually here, for my weekly view, I actually don't do that because this kind of shows me what's kind of on deck. I know some people maybe don't want to see things that have a due date that are like maybe 2 months from now or something like that. So I don't actually use any date filtering here, but I do use the date filtering on the weekly agenda here, right? Because I want it to be specific for that date. And actually, I don't want to see that. I want to see this week. But yeah, those filters, that's exactly something that I do each week, enter in those new dates. Yeah, there's little things like that are like that extra step, but the control that it gives me and the ability to see the data in a way that I want is helpful for me. So yeah, I don't put a filter on my weekly agenda. I just put that on my daily journal. How often do you talk with the other Notion pros about their workflow? I mean, we're in a Notion Pro Slack group and we share resources. And so often, we'll share screen caps about what we're doing and what we're discovering. So yeah, I guess a fair bit. And I mean, every Notion Pro space looks so different, right? Everyone's space is completely different. And that is where I feel the power is. And that's where I feel like sometimes there's kind of two minds. Like some people just, I want to log in and want it to work. And I don't want to fuss with it. Whereas other people want that granular control and to show and highlight however much information that you want. And it's just kind of interesting how different people design their spaces. So yeah. What do you use? Oh, what do you use for full page clipping? I use a Chrome extension called Full Page Screen Capture. And that, yeah, actually scrolls down and grabs the whole page pretty quickly. And then I right click on it and just paste it into the Notion note. So I will full page screen capture, clip the original page, copy and paste the screen capture into that page. When searching to populate contents on a relational property, is there a way to sort, filter, or even select the properties that are shown in the picker window? No, but I wish there was. That's definitely something that I wish you could do, is to filter the chosen relations, like especially if you're like only show me things that are not checked as done or something like that. That would be really great. So unfortunately, no, but Notion, I hope you're listening. We can hopefully address some of these most commonly asked questions here. Is there a way to somehow have a motivational quote pop up in your control center or homepage? So Erica, I wonder if you're asking if you can put a randomized one. Otherwise, of course, I mean, you could always just put a quote in there. Who is it? I don't know if anyone else watched one of the past office hours. I think it was Tommy Barav. I loved his office hour session on, I think it was a morning routine. I can't remember what the name of our session was, but Tommy Barav has designing a morning routine or something like that. And I believe he had a whole process for how he creates a sort of motivational, randomized quote. I just loved it. It was really great. Does anyone know a limitation that when you use two filters on the same property, when you create a new record from the filtered view, only the last option is applied? Oh, no, I have not seen that, Tony. Can you integrate Readwise quotes into the book you're reading and keeping notes on? There isn't a native Readwise quotes integration, but I believe you can export your notes and import them. I often will even like copy paste from Readwise. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's definitely not a direct integration, but there might be an easier way to do that. I'm curious if anyone else uses Readwise and has been filtering their stuff into Notion, and if you found an easier way to do that. Let me know in the chat if that's the case, if any Readwise users here have a system for that. Can a page block or content relate to a page property? I think we sort of covered this one in that you can't, relations can only be with databases, but if you have a property that you want to mention another page, you can definitely mention a page anywhere in your space. With your master tags, how do you show how many times you use that tag? Ooh. So that would depend, because you can do roll-ups, right? So I have a lot of connections in the master tag database, obviously. So if I open this up, I've got people, notes, knowledge hub, inspiration, words and wisdom, content, tools, 12 problems. And that's at least 12 different databases. So I only am really rolling up and counting the most commonly used ones, which are the notes and ideas and knowledge hub, words and wisdom too. So, I mean, if you did roll-ups for all of those, and then you could do a formula that just calculates the total, you could totally do that. That would be easy enough just to see exactly how many times you use that across all of your different spaces. And you might not need all of these different properties too. Like there's so many different ones here, and they're so tailored to my business, but maybe you just want to store, knowledge hub notes and ideas or something like that. You definitely don't have to have as many as I do here. Just started managing all my tasks with Notion. Used to use Things 3 for those, and Notion for projects. Some tips, maybe on managing work tasks and personal. I use a context property, but I don't know if there's another way. Oh, yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways you could organize that, Mariona. I don't know if anything that we've talked about previously in terms of like client dashboards, contextual dashboards might be helpful, right? Like you might have a client, even a client dashboard where it's not just like here I mix my personal, what needs to get done alongside my client tasks. I just kind of tuck them away because again, I sort of batch my client tasks, but I could drag an item from here right into doing or needs review right into my client's database here. So this allows me to kind of see at a glance everything that's happening here. And I can also add a new client that will have 3 columns there automatically. So it's really up to you how you want to organize that. You might want to create a contextual dashboard that just pulls in all of your client databases with maybe your personal one at the top. We talked a little bit about that. And I would definitely say the sharing and the nuances and organizing across different projects is definitely a more a more advanced use case for Notion. I do go way deeper on that in my course, but it's hard to answer in one question because it really depends on your business and what you're trying to do. Hopefully the contextual dashboards and having your pulling in your client master task databases into the same space will give you a little bit more control over that. Is there a way to create a column that expands over 2 or 3 rows? So no, Toran, but if you had, if you did that trick that we did in the beginning with the toggles, and you had a column and underneath it, you actually used that column with the 2 toggles and turned it into text, that's a workaround for that. So you can sort of do that. How to commit to a system? How do you resist the novelty? Oh, that's a good question. I can only speak from personal experience that I have tried so many project management systems and so many tools. And I think it's so personal, but Notion is like the only one that has worked for me, mostly because tasks are not getting buried. Like everything that I'm responsible for, I'm able to see in one place, whether it's client work, personal work, gardening projects, you name it, random thoughts, ideas. The fact that I get to design how that looks and how that happens, I'm able to reduce my context switching, which I have found to be pretty magical. So I think I've committed to this system because it's worked for me. And it's the only thing that's worked for me. If you find there's friction in your system and it's not working, then obviously there's room to improve something. And I think we have to pay attention to, like, what is that friction? Is it in the capturing process? Is it in the top level view of knowing everything that's happening? Is it in the focus and getting things done on a day-to-day basis? I think sometimes it's not the tool, it's our own habits or our own routines or commitments, whatever. Sometimes it is a tool. Sometimes a tool, can enable or disable certain things to be able to happen. Like, here's a great example. People have asked me, like, oh, what about Rome? Have you tried Rome? And I was like, maybe one day I'll try Rome, but for now, there's no friction in my system. I'm using it the way I've designed it to be used. So to me, anything else right now is a shiny object that I would be chasing. So I'm more interested in sort of honing and refining the system that I've got because it is working. If your system's not working, I think it's really good to take a peek at why. Sometimes it's that you just don't have standard operating procedures. Maybe you haven't really mapped out your workflow. Maybe your habits and focus aren't super honed in. So personally, I haven't had trouble committing to this particular system, but I struggled with Asana. It always felt like tasks were getting buried and things were getting missed because you'd have like a task and a subtask and a subtask, whatever. And so when you're in a subtask, I'm not able to actually see all the other things. Like, it just didn't work for my brain. I think it's a great task manager, and Things 3 is also a great task manager. But I think also that distinction between projects and tasks is really important too. So there's no one way to answer this. I think the ultimate challenge is to find the system and the tools that plug in really nicely for the way that you want to work. And I personally think just the flexibility of Notion can allow for so much to happen. It certainly is overwhelming. I think a lot of people get that analysis paralysis in the beginning because most people didn't necessarily study systems in school, and we're not necessarily born knowing how to we're kind of like building, like we're building with software, right? And if you've never done that before, it might be really, really overwhelming. So it does take a bit of time to learn, but I think you have to really pay attention and notice where are those points of friction? What are you trying to do ultimately? Where are things not getting done? Where are things falling through the cracks? And what needs optimization? Sometimes it is needing a new tool. Sometimes it's putting better boundaries in place. Sometimes it's doing a mind sweep, right? Like having a place where you can brain dump all the stuff, the mental RAM that's kind of stuck in your head. So yeah, I think I think novelty is appealing when maybe what you're doing isn't really working. So I haven't struggled with the novelty of exploration since using Notion personally. That's my own experience with that. So to each, I think, again, productivity is so personal, and it's to each his own. Yeah, so someone else said that the power was that it clicks with my brain. I've heard so many people say that. The way that it like works for your brain. And for me, I think I'm a very visual person. So being able to have a bit of control over how I want to see things, what I choose to display, what I choose to hide at any one given time, I find that super helpful. And again, like I can't imagine like wanting to just go to an advanced search in Evernote, but I imagine some people love that and really get a lot out of that. So I'm not knocking on that. I think you do have to know yourself well enough to know like where things are falling through the cracks and what needs to be improved. So I hope that helps. Any suggestion for budget pages in Notion? Mine's really plain and easy, maybe formulas. I can't find any templates. Okay, I'm gonna give my 2 cents on this. Personally, I don't do any budgeting in Notion. I actually don't think it's the greatest tool for it. If other people have found budgeting, templates and workflows, that's great. The only thing that I do finances wise, like we do our bookkeeping process in there, and we track all of our business expenses and recurring payments. So what's coming in on a monthly, weekly, yearly basis. But from day-to-day budgeting, I don't know that I necessarily would recommend using Notion. If anyone here has got a system for that and wants to share it, I think that's great. I think a tool like YNAB might be better. Also, I actually don't budget since reading the book Worry-Free Money. So I do a lot less tracking now since reading that book. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it. If you have debt, I would say read Living Debt Free. Amazing system. If you don't have debt, but you just want to get better with your budgeting, Worry-Free Money. So good. Anyway, I know it's a bit of a tangent. It's not giving you a template, but I don't track that in Notion because I don't think it's the best tool for it. That's my 2 cents on that. Okay. How do you handle a team having a collective task actions database, but members also having their own personal tasks, which they don't want to be public? So I think we sort of talked about this a little bit, but essentially you should have your team tasks, right? So at the workspace level, you've got actions that all the team members are responsible for, but then you can have your own private dashboard, right? Marie's tasks. And what I can do is pull in the actions database as well as create my own personal ones that nobody would ever see. Personal. And I can put the work related ones here. Right. And so every team member can, obviously it's like a very rudimentary example, but every team member can have their own task management dashboard that pulls in their work related tasks, their personal stuff, any personal links, things that they want to be doing. All of that can happen in the private area. And you can see it in the same place, but you're not tracking the tasks in the same database because you can't choose kind of who can see what within the same database. Hope that answers that question. Cool. Daniela says she uses Notion for budgeting. I don't know if you've got a template for that, or there might be some in the Notion template library. I'd be curious to hear, Daniela, how you use Notion for budgeting. I created a table to record my expenses, and then I've set up my weekly and monthly planning templates to pull in the total amount I've spent that week, month. Interesting. I mean, in one way that I track money in Notion is a sales database. So I do track all of my sales, invoices, things like that, and I connect that to my daily agenda and then weekly and monthly. So I know how much I've earned on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, which is helpful. But I don't really use it to like input or kind of manage day-to-day expenses. Sandra said, I like YNAB in general, but I do have a list. Yes, a list of anticipated contractor expenses and things like that, I think is really great. My financial journey on Notion began with preparing my taxes. Yeah, that's a great use case. And the bookkeeping process is super helpful in Notion too. Okay. Do you archive a month's tasks even if you lose? No. Okay, so I really don't use my archives much at all. I don't really archive tasks. Once a year, maybe, as we like clear out projects. So I do not archive a lot at all. And then on that note too, as I complete tasks related to a project, I can again move those tasks into that client projects database, and all of that data can be stored there, and it clears out my master task database. When it comes to your knowledge hub, do you treat courses differently from lessons or small chunks of information? Now, again, this is totally personal, but I save the course in the knowledge hub, and then inside the body of that course, I'll just have little headings like lesson 1, lesson 2, notes, little clippings or whatever. So any lessons or small chunks of information, I store in the body of that course, assuming it's related to that course. If it's like a separate article, like, you can see I've saved some articles about the para method, but then I also have Building a Second Brain as a course. I have those as 2 separate resources. One is marked course, one is marked article. Guys are troopers. There's still a bunch of you staying, like, what, an hour and 45 in? You guys are troopers. Okay, I have my own master task database and Notion Workspace, but our customer success team also uses it and would like some transparency when it comes to our tasks. Is linking the task database from our CS Workspace the only way into my control center, the only way to be able to see them in one place, or is there a smarter way to have my tasks together? I don't know if we clarified this, Erica, let me know. But basically, you've got your own master task database, and you've given your customer success team acts like they're using it, right? But you're wondering if it's possible to create a separation between the two, right? I would say that you should have one team level, everyone can see database of tasks, and anything that you don't want other people to see should really be in your own, like a personal database. That's my 2 cents on how that would connect. And again, feel free to ask in the sidebar if I didn't clarify that. Oh, and then one just says, when it comes to your knowledge hub, and then it got cut off. Hopefully I clarified that. Daniela, you're so helpful. It's unlikely we'll leave before you do. Love your content. Identify a lot with your systems. Thank you for the kind words. That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like, again, there's so many different ways that people set up their space. And, even like other Notion pros that use Para and their space looks completely different. And I think that's what's awesome about it is you got to design something that works for your brain. And this is what works for my brain. I want to share it. And I'm so passionate about it because, again, I feel like this is the first time in my life that I feel like I have a system and that I feel organized. I know where things live. Everything is 1 or 2 clicks away. And that's an amazing feeling. That's not something that's come naturally to me. I'm not a very type A organized person. So this allows me to feel creative and explore, but still have a place where I know where everything lives and things are getting done. So if it resonates with people, I think that's awesome. I'm just sharing the things that I think have really worked for me, like having that knowledge hub, having a content hub, a master tag database, an areas page, master task database that is separate. Any team members can access that, and then your own personal stuff. Where did I get those day of the week backgrounds from? So Creative Market is where I got the sort of watercolor thing. I did edit them in Photoshop and then put some text on top. So awesome, Erica. Yeah. I feel like almost everyone that kind of takes it on then wants to bring it to their industry, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. How can I show people the way? It gets very exciting. And I think it's tricky when you're introducing team members to Notion. You really have to, I think, kind of show, don't tell. So you do have to do a little bit of that initial setup before you bring brand new team members on. Otherwise, people are like, oh, another tool? Are you kidding me? What is this? And then it's a blank canvas, which can be really overwhelming, right? Thank you. Thank you for supporting Daniela about the templates. That's cool. That's really great to hear. I do have a set of planning templates if you're aware of that. Is there a way to sort a task while I search a task to add to my journal or weekly agenda? Yes. Oh, wait. So are you talking about when you're searching a relation and you want to find it? Is there a way to sort task while I search a task to add to my journal or weekly agenda? When I want to add a task, I see the entire months and it's not sorted by date. I can't see a way to sort them when I open the relational database to add a task. Oh, that's okay. So that's interesting. So are you adding it from, you're in your task database and you're wanting to add the month, or you're in the month and you want to add your tasks into the month? When I want to add a task, I see the entire month and it's not sorted by date. Let me know if you can clarify that. Maybe we can, do I have my test task here? I don't actually, do I have month in here? No, I actually don't connect this to my month. Enter the tasks for the week. Yeah, okay. So like, let's go into my weekly agenda and do that. Okay, so I mean, one thing I do differently too is I actually am not pulling in, I don't relate all the tasks in my week. I actually do it at the journal level. So Friday here, I just have a win the day here for this week. And so, yeah, it doesn't pull them in any kind of order, and you can't necessarily sort by that. Yes, you can search. So I don't know, you know, I can search and add that there. Is that what you mean? Yeah, entering your tasks for the week. So I just do it in here as my win the day task. So I'm actually not linking up every single task to the week. I'm just linking the ones that are my win the day tasks, because for the most part, I'm mostly in here doing my planning and assigning things and what have you. You can also make sure that your filter has and month equals blank, and that way anything new that you add here would automatically be assigned to that month. Yeah, you can't sort, unfortunately. Yes, unfortunately. But again, these are great questions, because I know you're not the only person that has these questions. So it's good for Notion to hear. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, that unfortunately we cannot sort and search that way. And yeah, here's another example. You can see that this is connected to my goals database, which is personal, and then Ben's key results. I can't see that because I don't have permission for it. I wish that the whole thing just didn't show up because I don't have permission for it, but just to show you how you can, like, two people kind of share a database but have relations out to private databases. Cool. I think we got through all of those questions in just under 2 hours. Was there anyone else who wanted me to clarify anything any deeper? I know we kind of had to go fast on some of those questions. You guys are, yeah, troopers. It's like 55 of you still hanging out right now. Anything else too I can show you? You might have seen too, like, these contextual dashboards are pretty new, totally inspired by August Bradley, by the way. I really loved his alignment zone and focus zone and that sort of thing. So I've been experimenting with these different databases too. So when you want to get into a creative mood, create a dashboard that, you know, pulls in all those creative pieces, inspiration, whatever, so that you can do what you need to do. So I'm experimenting with that a little bit. What are sprints? So sprint planning is, if you're not, I guess, working with a team, they may not be as relevant or useful, but it's essentially like a predefined moment in time. It's like a 6-week or 2-week, like, you can decide how long a sprint is. Usually in product design or product development, you would have, like, we're building a feature, something specific, in 6 weeks, and then you're breaking down everything that needs to get done. What's the outcome of that sprint? What do we want to get done? We review the past So we have these tucked under toggles. What went well? What didn't go well? What are you most proud of? It's just kind of an opportunity for reflection and then shaping it. And this one also, if you watch the past office hours with Nick True, I really, really liked his the shaping process, which was influenced by the Basecamp Shape Up book. Right, and we've got our initiatives in there, and all of those have all the details and what that's going to do. Implementation, task setup instructions are here, and then we go through and we do a bit of our sprint planning. And so we're basically kind of assigning ourselves these initiatives and outcomes and things that we want to do over the next 6 weeks, and then we're going to measure just to see how did we do with that? What did that look like? I don't know. It may not be super helpful if you're not coordinating with someone else or working as part of a team. For us, it's just a chance to be more accountable, make sure that we each know what we're working on and kind of cheer each other on. You show here your actions database with the on deck view. Are the tags that you show today, next, later, manually assigned, or do they relate to a due date in the item? They're manually created. I don't often use in the getting things done. He often recommends like not using due dates unless there is a legitimate consequence. So I actually prefer, like when I create a new item here, it's going to automatically have today. This thing needs to get done. I can open that up and you can see it's automatically today because I added it here under this column. And I can also be like, actually, no, that's going to happen next. You can drag those items around really, really quickly. This is just a view that I really like. Some people prefer a calendar view. I know with August's Bradley session, we talked about the idea of a due date, D-O versus D-U-E. It's really up to you. But yeah, these are semi-manually created. And only the ones that have dates will show up here with a date. And if it's overdue, there's a little exclamation mark that shows up because of a formula. But I only put a date if there is legitimately a date by which it needs to be done. Yeah. So thanks for sharing in the sidebar there. There's lots of past office hours. We have one that's starting from scratch. We've got ones that are more conversational. There's something for everyone, I think, and really specific use cases where we interview people who are using it in really interesting ways. So, definitely check out some of the past ones that might be more aligned and specific, especially if you're just getting started. Maybe check out the starting from scratch one. Awesome, Edgar. Thanks for joining. Cool. I'm glad this is helpful. Yay. Very cool. 2 more questions popped in. Is filter the way to search tags? I'm not sure is filter the way to search tags. I'm not sure if I follow what you're asking there, Steve. Because I know you can't. I'm wondering if it's because you can't search tags across your global workspace. Is that what you were referring to? And if so, the global tag database kind of helps alleviate some of that search. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to clarify on that. Heard about Notion, found it a little confusing. Please suggest the learn resources from getting started to becoming a pro. Yes, I think some people answered in the sidebar, but I would say we've got a great session that was building from scratch, and I will share that. I will share that link with you folks. Any newbies definitely want to check that one out. And the other thing I tell beginners is to not be afraid to jump into, set yourself up a sandbox where you can be like hitting the / command and poking at things and making new pages with databases, and don't be afraid to mess around while you're just understanding the core functionality, and don't feel like you need to design it before you start using it. I think it does require some data to actually be put in there for it to become useful. I do have a YouTube channel too. I do cover lots of tutorials in my YouTube channel. I do get a hard time sometimes because people are like, this is way too advanced. So I know that my tendency is to lean a little bit more toward the intermediate use cases, but hopefully the starting from scratch office hours is a good place to start for more beginner folks. Great. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. This is awesome. Great questions, really great questions. And we'll definitely be, relaying those to Notion because there's a lot of similar themes that keep coming up and a lot of feature requests that are very, very similar. So I think that the fact that we can bring these back to Notion and hopefully influence, improvements and features that really address some of those use cases. So yeah, hopefully that helped. Another last minute question popped in about the on deck view. What is the next and later in your week? I use Saturday and Sunday days, but it's a bit too much. How do you use the overdue marker formula? So for me, next and later is like pretty subjective. Later is like doesn't need to be in my realm of focus this week. It still needs to get done. I don't want it to kind of be lost, and it's still top of mind. And then what was the other part of your question? Oh, the overdue marker formula. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so I have a property called Do It that is, you might have seen, like I've played with this quite a bit and like simplified it. And, but basically if it's recurring, it's going to show a little icon here. And that's the day property. So if the day property is recurring, so let me adjust that. You'll see the little icon, recurring icon, and you'll see it actually shows up there now instead of here. If it's essential, deep work, some of those will influence that. Like let's say I say today and daily grind, it's going to say delegate. And that will show up here in the daily grind. And that will also show up in my assistant's dashboard because she has a filter that will see all of the stuff that's delegated in there. So that's one. Next, later, someday. Oh, right, daily grind. So because this due date is past due, I have this little property here. So if it's recurring, it shows that one. If it's done, it will show completed. If it is less than, well, basically if it's overdue, show that. If it's less than, I think it's like within like the next 72 hours, it'll be like coming up next. So I just have like a couple little if statements in there that just kind of show a little sense of urgency there, right? And that's a little less intense than the one that was like 5 alarm fire that I had before. So I like the subtlety of this one. I don't know if my task template for that one is up to date, but and it depends on a couple different properties. I will follow up with any of the sort of questions or notes that we referenced in this session with a copy paste of that property. So I will paste this formula here, if that's helpful. And maybe I'll just do it in here, task formula. And you may have to do a little bit of figuring out to make sure that it matches up. Because it depends on the day property. So you'd have to have a day property that would have these things. But if you want to use this, I'll make this public access. Copy the page link, and then I'll just put that in the sidebar. So that should at least get you, hopefully get you started there. So you just have to take a peek, right? Property day and then date, and you just have to make sure that they're named the same exactly. Or again, make adjustments if you're comfortable or savvy enough with updating the formulas that you can make your own. Yeah. Cool. Cool. I think that covers it. We did a good full 2 hours. Thanks for everyone who stuck around. And yeah, sorry for our little beginning glitch where I think I had an extra Crowdcast window open in a different computer or something like that. But yeah, thanks everyone for showing up, asking all the great questions. We'll definitely be relaying these to Notion, and hopefully we get some of those lovely features that we want to see more of. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. And I think next week I'll have to double check our schedule. I think we've got a COVID specific episode of people that are doing really interesting things to help out during this strange pandemic time. Otherwise, I will see you on the internet. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.